very exciting former professional rugby player, now obviously MD of a business. Can you just walk me through some of the big differences from coming on a world of professional rugby to now being in the corporate world?
It was a bit of a challenge. You can imagine in a rugby team in the field, it's very direct, it's very blunt. You make a mistake, you know about it. Not only do your teammates tell you, but it's obvious. The ball's on the floor, To being in an office where, to be honest, a lot of people aren't used to receiving feedback, let alone as bluntly as that's rubbish. You didn't want to be dropped, let alone out of the match day squad, for example. And the good coaches would always have 2 or 3 that were fighting for the same position. There was never a given that you were going to start. And I think if you have that competitive nature, you will see which ones step up and which ones are actually like, no, it's not for me. When I joined the corporate world, it was more, you automatically expected a percentage pay rise. The company does well, you get a bonus. It was a given. People just assumed. So I think that was the first place where I sort of said, well, actually, it's not a given. If you want to increase, your performance has to be consistent or increase.
It's tough, I think, because we've got into a place where that's been accepted for so long.
At the end of the day, it is tough. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's tough.
Hello and welcome to the Courageous Leaders podcast. On today's show, we have the brilliant Arran Cruickshanks. Arran is MD at mccglc. He's a former professional rugby player who thrives in fast-paced environments and regularly speaks about attitude to risk and the power of uncertainty. Hello, Arran. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time today. So good to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And what I'm going to go straight in with is, what does courageous leadership mean to you?
Yeah, I was thinking this one over, and for me, there's a number of elements that build into a courageous leader. But a key one that I've always respected in many people is having a vision and sticking to it. I think as a leader, you need to sort of give the direction and then push it forward. I think if you get diluted or you get confused, it then filters down. Yeah. And you don't really make the progress you want.
Has that happened to you, for you to know that's so important?
Yeah, I've seen it across a couple of companies at different times. I think, a leader starts with a vision and then they change, and you're always questioning their motivation for change. Is that self-led? Is it something about the business? Is it a bigger picture? Sometimes there's things going on that you're not aware of. Yeah. But I think in terms of the team and the clarity, they need to have that direction. And obviously you take opinions and you change things, but the vision and the direction is always consistent.
At the moment, with the world changing faster than we've ever known it, and it's only going to get faster, how far actually into the future do you think is a sensible place to be looking into now? Because I remember back in the day, what's your 10-year vision, and what's a fair vision for you, do you think, in terms of time?
I think, as you said, with all the changes post-pandemic, where we were literally doing a forecast every week to month to now, I would say 12 to 18 months is realistic for us. I have a 12-month plan into 18 months, and then obviously I have a vision for 3 to 5 years. But 12 to 18 seems a bit more realistic. And
do you find it easy to know what the vision is? Is it yourself as the managing director that goes, right, this is it, this is where we're going? Or is it a real collective, everyone coming together to decide what that is?
It's a collective. Take multiple opinions and obviously area of expertise in terms of what are clients asking for? What are we seeing? What's driving the business? To then, as I said, then you're the final decision maker. Someone needs to make that decision and say, right, this is what we're going with and we're going to fully commit to it. Otherwise, there's not that commitment, and I feel people start doing their own thing and you get lost.
How easy or hard has that been for you to be that final decision maker?
It's something I've had to learn. Yeah. And I think sometimes I bring it back to when I wasn't able to make the decisions and how frustrated I was. So now actually I embrace actually making those decisions. And I think if I go through the process and I feel like I've listened to people, I've done the homework, fair to say, I'm not making impulse decisions, then I'm quite happy to make them and give people a direction.
And if you've got like 3 to 4 people that are just like, I just don't agree with you, I thought the vision was here, but you realise, no, we're going here. How do you navigate the people that aren't on side or don't believe that is the vision you should be going for?
I think it's taking the time to talk them through the vision. I think sometimes I've had a couple of people where it takes them a little bit longer to understand, and if they want to, they will understand. And I think you will always get some like, no, I'm just not, it's not for me, I don't get it. And then it changes from getting them on the bus, fair to say, to then actually working out, to be brutal, is there a seat for them on the new bus? Yeah. And then you're working with them. And I think that sometimes is also very difficult but very impactful. Because the rest of the team, if you've got 95% of the people on the same path and you've got 5 that aren't, it can almost do a lot of damage.
And a lot of the time, isn't it? It's like you deciding have they got a seat, but sometimes they might decide that a seat isn't for them. And I think it's actually having those adult conversations where you can talk openly about that versus I can think all the HR policies and fears of can't say this, can't be looking to take someone's seat away from them. And actually sometimes it does just need a grown-up conversation of where we're going now. It doesn't seem to be what you want.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, having that clear direction is fair to the teams.
Yeah.
This is where we're going. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but this is the business and this is where we're going. They then, as you said, have a choice to make.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with choosing alternatives because there's multiple agencies, there's a lot of opportunities.
And you've changed direction big time in your career.
Yes.
So, very exciting former professional rugby player, now obviously MD of a business. Big transition, which we'll unpick more as we go through the podcast. But for you, can you just walk me through some of the highlights of what you've seen, the big differences from coming on a world of professional rugby to now being in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think, as you said, there's a lot of similarities, but obviously massive differences. I think a big learning was, in many ways, I was fortunate at rugby that a lot was decided for me. So when you're training, you get a training program. You get your dietitian telling you what to eat, pretty much when to sleep. You're very structured.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah. In some elements, you are so structured, to the fact of Friday was a rest day, Sunday was a rest day. That it was really scripted. So now coming into business, there isn't that. It was, okay, you're meant to be in the office 9 until 6 or 9 till 5, whatever it is. But within that, there's no one telling you what to do when. So I think you have to be motivated to do that yourself or have someone that does motivate you. So I think from that perspective, it was a bit of a challenge. And then also from a leadership perspective, how I spoke to people was hugely different. I think you can imagine in a rugby team in the field, it's very direct, it's very blunt. You make a mistake, you know about it. Not only do your teammates tell you, but it's obvious. The ball's on the floor, To being in an office where, to be honest, a lot of people aren't used to receiving feedback that known as bluntly as that's rubbish.
Yeah. So what did you have that situation where then you were blunt and it was like, whoa, hang on a minute, this is a totally different minefield?
Yeah. I was managing a team and I think it was a presentation or something, and someone had come to me and said this, it's amazing. And I gave some direct feedback, nothing that I thought was unjust, should we say. Walked away, they changed it, came back, the presentation went very well. It was great, a result. In my mind, the process had been done, it had been dealt with, it was great. It wasn't until probably 4 months later with the mid-year review or something, and they brought it up as a factor that had caused them a lot of stress for the coming months because they weren't used to receiving feedback. Right. And they didn't know how to take it. They thought it had failed. And I think it was just a learning from me of how I present feedback, but then also how I need to consistently give feedback. Yeah. And how we're creating an environment where there's accountability. People know whether they've hit the mark or not. If they're hitting the mark, there's huge opportunities. But then also there is that expectation. Yeah. And I feel sometimes that expectation is not set. So then people, in my opinion, cruise because they haven't been told otherwise. Yeah. So again, as a leader, it's up to us to set those expectations and then ask team members, managers to drive that across the business.
You say it's fair, isn't it? If the expectation is there, then you can very easily quite see if you're hitting the mark or not. And I remember when we spoke before, you were talking about kind of on the pitch, on the field. You'd be on the pitch and then very quickly have a video watching back what you did well and not did well. How has that enabled you to receive feedback? And was that quite a journey for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, it was certainly a journey, but I think I look back and I was in that sort of setup from probably 16, 17, having games recorded, looking at highlight reels or snippets of this is what you need to improve, go and do this, do that. And it's a big part of my learning. Yeah. So then coming into corporate environment, I was used to it. Mm-hmm. And in times I was almost going to my managers and saying, right, give me feedback. Like, I've been here 3 months, you haven't said anything. Like, is this good or bad? And they were like, relax, like it's good. But also for me, it's the drive. I want to do better, because I've always said, right, okay, how am I going to push myself? Because to me, if I wasn't pushing myself, you'd lose your spot. Yeah. So it was always, the two go hand in hand for me.
And where's that? Because I think it was fascinating talking to you. Where you go, you always want your spot in the team. You don't want to be in the bench. How did that raise performance in you, and how you saw that raise performance in others? That goal where you could see, am I going to be on the team or am I not? How did that drive you?
I think it's a big factor. I think it was always, you didn't want to be dropped, let alone out of the match day squad, for example. And I think it's having that competitive squad is what I look back at, and that we drove each other, And the good coaches would always have 2 or 3 that were fighting for the same position. So it was always, there was never a given that you were going to start. It was always competitive. And I think if you have that competitive nature, you will see which ones step up and which ones are actually like, no, it's not for me. Again, I'm not trying to replicate everything from sport within the business. That is one area that I think you need. And also, I think we touched on motivation, we can get into is knowing which players in the team want to push and which ones are your stable players that you need that are just consistent and deliver.
It's making me feel now that my career was ever so easy. It's like I had my spot. If I either choose to leave a company or, I had to perform pretty badly to be pushed out. Whereas this constant sort of is it every week that you weren't sure if you were going to play, or so every week not sure if you were going to get
Team was released every Thursday. So you didn't know until Thursday whether you were playing on a Saturday. What
do you think? Because I think there's something really, as you say, you can't always bring all of sport into corporate, but what do you think is within that actually could, it may say a funny thing to say, but wake up the corporate world a bit? Because I do think there's a risk that we've become a bit comfortable, a bit safe. As you said, we go in, we do 9 to 5. We're not always really structured in what we're doing in that day. And we end up just saying, oh, we're so busy, but what we're busy really doing, and is it having an impact? What do you think we could learn from that, not knowing if you're going to make the team? There's 3 other people that want that spot. What could we take into business from that?
I think a couple of things that I've started trying to implement, and I think key factors are, when I joined the corporate world, it was more, if you've been at a business for a year, you automatically expected a percentage pay rise. The company does well, you get a bonus. It was a given. People just assumed. So I think that was the first place where I sort of said, well, actually, it's not a given. If you want to increase, your performance has to be consistent or increase. So people wanted to take, oh, well, I've been here 3 years, I should now be a senior. Okay, but what are you doing differently that makes you a senior? If you're doing the same thing you did 3 years ago, you're not a senior. So I think it's trying to get people to think differently, that it's not a given. And I think that is tough.
It's tough, I think, because we've got into a place where that's been accepted for so long. And it would drive me crazy where I'd see 2 people get promoted at the same time, where one was way better than the other and the other wasn't ready. But because they joined at the same time, they felt they had to be promoted at the same time. It had to be fair. But actually, it wasn't fair, because the person who wasn't ready is being put in a position that actually predominantly they're failing because they're not ready for it, and going to destroy their confidence, etc. So I think that's really nice, trying to bring back into that culture that, you earn your spot, we will look after you and help you grow your career, but it's a 2-way thing. You also need to show us that you can earn the spot, you can be consistent, and you can keep your performance going.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, I like that, really like that. And then with that performance, I know something you're very passionate about is motivation. Talk to me about your thinking around motivation and what you do.
So for me, it's quite quickly learning, again, in the rugby, everyone was motivated to be in that team.
Yeah.
You didn't get into that team if you weren't motivated. The amount of training, the amount of steps you had to go through to get to that position, you were motivated to be there and keep your spot. Because if you weren't motivated, you wouldn't do that. Simple. Whereas coming into a business, I had to, again, take the time to understand different people's motivations. There's some that they want the career path. They want to progress. They want to be an MD. They want to be a senior person, and they thrive on that. So it's giving them the career path and the stages that go with it. Some people are, okay, it's financial. I need to progress because I need to do certain things. That's one motivation. And then some, it's they don't have motivation to grow the business in the sense of, well, I'm not first. I like my role. This is where I am. And again, it's accepting there's nothing wrong with any of those, but understanding how they all trigger slightly differently, and how you talk to people, and how you position what the vision is to different audiences. Because if someone is just, actually right now, I love my setup, I start at 10, do the school run, come in, I leave at 6, and it's a balance. I don't want to take on extra work. I don't want this. Absolutely fine. And it's creating an environment for all of those people within the vision and the team.
Yeah. Does it ever come up of that, going back to something like that fairness thing? So if someone's motivated by money, but someone's motivated by having the time, how do you look after every individual's needs, but also as a team, they all feel it's fair?
Yeah. As you said before, I think it's understanding that if there's someone coming in and they're starting work at, 8 to hit the sort of Asian market, then they're still there at 8 p.m. to do the US market, they're grafted, right? They're delivering consistently and fully committed to someone else, as I said, that is comfortable in that doing my job, but I'm not going above. It's having the conversations with both of them, and particularly the one that's doing their job but not the above, to realize, well, actually, you can't be surprised when others are progressing. You're not going to be on the same rate.
Yeah.
I think that's just, again, having a grown-up conversation and explaining. And a lot of the time when you're communicating with people, they get it because they're like, well, yeah, that's fine.
And I like that. When you're communicating with people, it is amazing how many conversations we avoid because we're mind reading and thinking what they're going to think. And actually, when you just talk to someone in that alignment, and then they're not creating stories in their head, you're not creating things, and it's just so much clearer, isn't it, when we just talk?
Yeah, as you said. I've been in a number of meetings where it's like, right, what's gone wrong? Why didn't we do this? And as you said, it's simply because someone hasn't spoken to someone.
Didn't tell someone.
I think, again, as a leader, that's something that sometimes gets forgotten.
Yeah.
We have a lot of knowledge or visions in our head, but we're not communicating. No. So, did I not say that?
Well, we think we have.
Yeah.
Did I not say that?
That was happening because of this.
Yeah, and it's turned into...
Yeah.
And keeping on, just going back to motivation for a bit, you young, going into rugby, and, keeping that motivation in yourself to show up every week, to want to get picked. How much was the structure input? Because I've actually never thought about structure and motivation as linked. How much was that structure crucial with your nutrition, your schedule, your time plan to help you be motivated?
I'm just saying it. I think, on reflection, it must be huge because even the days where you're not motivated, you've had a tough game at the weekend, let's be honest, maybe had a bigger night on a Saturday, on a Monday morning, you've still got to be there for your gym session or your pool session. I think taking the thought process out of it would make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's like you just hit autopilot. Okay, I've got to be there. I've got to put this on, It does help.
And as soon as you're doing it, you lift.
Yeah.
You're swimming. You're like, right.
You hit autopilot to get there. Yeah. And then when you get there, you've got the team around you. So you're not going to be the weak link, and then you automatically get into it.
I like that. So with that team and the structure, it helps you keep your standards high.
Yep.
Was there a situation? Because I always think, when you see sports teams, they're very tight. If I ever think of teamwork, I think of sport. Is there a time when it happens where you don't really like one of your team members, but that is part because the focus is on team and the win? How does that play out in sport? Because obviously I see that a lot in the corporate world. How does sport deal with that?
It certainly happens.
Yeah.
There's certainly a number of, should we say, teammates that you don't necessarily get along with or click with. As I said, particularly where it's the coaches automatically create this environment that's competitive. They don't want you to be friends. And particularly in rugby, it's a sport where it does spill over sometimes, right? You get fights in training, you get different things. And
I thought it was a gentleman's sport, rugby. No.
No. Time and place for gentlemen, but not in training. I think and that again is just driving that performance. Yeah. If it is the team mindset that if someone's not pulling their weight, they get called out in their own way, right? Or you get churned out because sometimes there's big signings or whatever coming with an ego. They still have to deliver, and that is part of the culture.
How did you manage your ego?
I was quite fortunate. I didn't have one.
Everyone has an ego.
No, I think I was always. I was never the flash player. I was never the best player. Okay. I was always keep my head down, be consistent. And I think that was sort of you find your place in the team.
Yeah.
And I think that was mine.
And what mental strength did it take for you to be playing at that level around, you say, lots of people with egos? What mental strength did it take for you to show up? Because I'm just thinking of kind of how that mental strength has helped you in terms of the transition that you've done as well.
I think it's big because you have to, as you said, you have to put at times your feelings to the side and realize that actually this needs to work. And I think that's a big thing of, okay, don't necessarily 100% like this person or agree with what they're doing, but this is the vision and we need to make it work. And if you're, again, understanding the environment, if you're the one that's not buying into the vision for your own opinions, you're not going to be there very long. So you have to buy into it.
And am I right in thinking is if you're on the rugby team, the vision is to win?
Yep.
So it's very clear we're all going to win. If there's anyone on this team who's not behind winning and is not showing up, not doing the routine, not following, then you are out.
Yep.
Because it's very obvious in office. It's very simple and clear. That's where we're all going.
We need to win games.
I like that. And that's how you're just trying to bring that simplicity and that clarity into the business. And then you can very quickly see the team that are behind it and probably very quickly see the ones that aren't.
Exactly. And the difference with business is it's a longer game.
Yeah.
Right. And it's staggering. I think a couple of teams sometimes call me up on it and they're like, well, you're looking at it like a season or a pre-season. But that's how I know to structure time. So sometimes it's like, right, well, actually, in a quieter period, we've got a 6 weeks block. What are we going to do to put us in better stead for the competitive time when it comes in September? All of these things. And it's then how you can integrate that into different phases.
I love that you bring Caesars with how you think about time. It's nice. I'm guessing your thinking is just so different to everybody else's. It's just given a new, fresh perspective on thinking about business.
And I think it is trying not to kill the team with too many sports analogies and references, but it's how I process it myself. So again, financial year or whatever, that's the season. Yeah. Okay, so it's a 12-month period. What are we going to do in the 12 months to make sure and go back to our owner saying we've been successful? Yeah. Like, how can we do this to then say, actually, we want to then take that growth and go for another 3 years. It's all about the process.
So the transition for you, what was that story of going from rugby to now being MD of a fantastic company? What was that for you?
It was, so when someone says, how did you get into events or particularly at the time at pharmaceutical events, I was like, I would never have said I was ever going into pharmaceutical events, that's for sure. But I was playing rugby in Surrey, ended up picking up a few injuries that happened. And then I was coaching on a Sunday one week and I just ruptured my ACL and things like that. And one of the dads was like, do you want some work experience? You know, you've got a few months now, what are you going to do? So I started working with him part-time and on his events business, which was great. Got to experience a number of things and slowly just realized that there was a lot more outside of sport than I necessarily thought. And then also part of me was like, okay, I've had a number of serious injuries. How long is rugby going to last? And that conversation that every sportsman has that you just put off, it's like, well, actually, what's coming after? And it's like, I'll just keep going.
Is that really hard? Because your whole identity has been sport for so long. Is that?
Yeah, it was.
Think of a new version of you.
I think, to be honest, it was pretty brutal. I think the first 12 to 18 months of no rugby. So I was like, do I go? I tried the sort of wean myself off. So I went part-time, semi-professional. Then I went into actually, that wasn't working. I was trying to do the same amount of training, same games at the weekend, but then traveling just wasn't sustainable. So then I was like, right, I'm going to commit to work. I'm going to shift the mindset. I'm going to commit to work. So the first 12 months of no rugby was really tough because I think it was losing the community feel. So like, as I said, you spend so much time with these guys in the close-knit community of rugby to then step out and not have that. Like all of a sudden I didn't know what to do on a Friday night or a Saturday. It was like, wow, you know. So it was a weird transition, which was tough. And I think that's probably part of the reason I threw myself into the travel side of the business. I was doing a lot of travel, some incentive trips, stuff like that to keep busy and try and get through it.
And how did you learn it all so fast?
Just, to be honest, a little bit of trial and error.
Okay.
I think it was literally just say yes, have a go, work it out. I think that's why I think I moved more into quite quickly, less operational. So I did the project management, delivery, that side of the business into account management and client facing. Because as soon as I started spending time with stakeholders and clients, I realized actually that's the area I really enjoy in the relationships. And then another side of the sport that I had never even considered was from a young age, after a game, you always had to go into the bar and talk to sponsors and to people that had a strong opinion on your performance that you didn't want to hear. You couldn't really care less what they thought, but you had to be polite, you had to take all of this stuff, and it was all about stakeholder management. So then I'm not saying all clients don't care what they think or whatever, but it is similar to an environment where you're used to talking to people. You have to have, as I said, grown-up conversations and understand what they expect. And I think that actually put me in good stead for talking to people.
Yeah. I always, I thank my mum and dad so much. So I started waitressing when I was 12. So between 12 and sort of 18, I was a waitress. You literally couldn't have asked for better training and having to be front of house, talking to people, asking for money, trying to sell a dessert for them because you could make more profit. And it's like, yeah, I think sometimes we don't realise some of these other things we do hold us so much in later life.
Yeah, 100%. And then I look at some of the sort of junior people coming through that haven't had the hospitality, they haven't had environment where they're talking to, should we say, adults and not necessarily getting the answer they want. They don't know how to react. And I think that's where working with some of the account management team of, okay, you're not always going to get the answer you want.
Yeah.
How do you take negative feedback? How do you take challenges to then go around and approach it from a different direction? Or, you know, it's all skills that I think at the moment are being overlooked.
Have you noticed a big difference? Because I'm thinking because you went in at 16 into a rugby environment, I'm guessing the discipline was pretty there for you already to be disciplined, focused. What do you notice with the younger generation coming in, as you said, that the communication and being able to receive feedback isn't as strong as maybe it was when I was in corporate? Are there other things you're noticing that you actually go, being in an environment like sport or having some discipline or self-motivation would be the thing that would help so many people?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard because I think a number of the new talent coming through and they're just, I don't think they're aware of what they're getting into half the time.
Right.
So they come into an agency and the pace of an agency is high. There's points where the stress levels are extremely high. And I think we need to mitigate that as a leader, but we also can't take it away. So it's, again, setting the tone from the beginning that there is an expectation. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a thing. We've got these elements to support you. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a project manager within an events agency or you want to be consistent in an agency, it is tough. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's tough. It might not be the job for you. Because we need to, I believe, start raising the standards. Because particularly after the pandemic, I think there was a number of people, whether it's freelance or people looking for jobs, that came in and said, I'm demanding this. This is my expectation. This is salary expectation. This is, the ball was in their court. Whereas now I think we're trying to backtrack a little bit and say, well, actually, you went into that position when there was a time of a little bit of panic, right? There was not enough resource to deliver what we're delivering. And now we're almost resetting again and saying, well, actually, you're not just going to stay there because you were there. Yeah. And it's that balance.
I do worry that we're becoming a bit too accommodating. And also it's to say that it is okay in a workplace to be busy, to be a bit messy, and to have a pace, and that stress does exist in the workplace. And as we know, some stress can be healthy, so it needs to be managed. But I do feel there's a bit of an expectation of people coming in and just thinking I'll come in at 9 to 5, do what I'm asked, and it's easy. And unfortunately, that isn't the reality of the workplace. And unfortunately, I do think COVID, because we all had to lean in so much to look after everybody, people are still hoping for that. And it's not sustainable. And I worry that businesses are becoming more like parents to people than that employee leadership kind of relationship that actually will help them grow.
Yeah. I think, and I'm seeing that, I'm in a new position where I've got an owner and I've got a team and I've got a company that I want to protect and look after, but then at the same time now the owner is saying, okay, we need to swing back the balance a little bit and say, well, actually, I can't just keep giving, we need to now lift it, as you said. They need to protect the business a bit more. They need to start growing. We need to do things from a business perspective from an owner, because it was tough on them as well for the last 3 to 5 years, They took massive hits, so then I need to now balance their needs against protecting the team, but also setting these new standards. Yeah. And it is tough.
I do think it's remembering sometimes it's a business and why business exists. And I do think a lot is being asked of business at the moment. That I'm not saying it's wrong, but how it's been doing and is it sustainable? And I also just worry that people won't want to become leaders because the pressure now on leaders and what they need to know and understand, and I see a lot of fear in people worried about what they get. Can they say this? Can they not say this? Yeah, I do worry that you get. I'm hearing a lot of people going, "Oh, why would you want to be a leader?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that used to be the thing everyone was wanting to be." And I think people are now worried. Actually, that's quite stressful, isn't it? That's quite a lot of pressure being a leader today.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the first things I did when I went into this role was to strengthen the HR function.
Yeah,
because I had this, I'm going to set a clear vision, I'm going to set expectations, but I want them to know there is this support and there is those elements. But as you said, it's a business and we have to start performing.
Yeah.
You know, we can't just tick along saying, oh, this is great.
Yeah. And for you personally, how have you helped yourself to keep performing? So that was a big, letting go of the rugby, and that was a big part of your identity. Now, running an events company. What support did you have in doing that transition? Because you look like you got it all together. You look like you know.
Yeah, I think it was a big learning for me. As I said, the brutal transition from rugby into whatever it was going to be. It was, events at the time. To then now go through into a more creative agency and different elements. I had to put my hands up, and I think I accepted probably 6 months into the transition that actually I didn't have all of the answers. As much as my poker face in the company and everything, and you're like, you got this together. But internally, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, where do I actually want to be in 18 months, 3 years or whatever? So I went and spoke to someone externally and was like, right, I'm going to go out of the business. I don't need to take it to the business. They don't need to know what my thought process is. I'm going to find someone external to talk to and say, right, actually, this is my journey so far. And I think it's great to almost have that as a sounding board. It was just a lot of the answers put together myself, but it's having that sounding board and someone just to reassure you that actually what you're going through is normal.
That's another thing, it is normal.
So I think that's a big fact I would say to anyone, and talk to people in the team. I'm like, go and talk to someone.
Yeah.
Who do you talk to? Do you have an external, whether it's a mentor or whether it's someone professionally, if that's what you need, mental health, like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Because I always saw it as well as, even during the sport, we had sports psychiatrists, we had people that supported us from okay, so you missed that kick of the weekend, you lost the game, how does that make you feel? Through to then, that's what also stopped. Yeah. So then I was like, I need to go and talk to someone, like sound this out. Always quite strategic in my approach, because I was also, right, where do I want to be? Yeah. I'm controlling where I want to be, rather than just being reactive. It was always, so I would recommend it to anyone.
I think that's brilliant. And in terms of, as you said, I think it's so good, like in sport, we've got the coaches, you've got the psychs, you've got the physio, there's everything surrounding the players to make them be the best they can. And actually within businesses, especially large businesses, it's hard to provide that for everyone, and also hard to notice the people that maybe don't feel comfortable asking for help. And I think for all of us, just to get a bit more, and I think for leaders, it's not, you don't need to know all the answers as a leader. You don't need to understand how all the mental health challenges work, what's going on, but actually just having things in place for people to go to, I think is the responsibility.
Yeah, I think people in place, but then also creating the environment where it's okay
to say, some help.
And
for your team to know that you've asked for help. I think sometimes when it starts from the top to go, I needed to get some help, then your team go, oh, okay, this is normal.
Yeah. And then it's that balance again though, between offering the support and saying it's there, and then also having your business expectation.
Yeah. Or taking it on yourself as a leader.
It's like, we're not saying, something goes wrong. You can just stop and say, actually, it's tough. There is going to be toughness, right? But we've also got the support for when you really need it. It's that balance.
And how we keep you moving forward. Really nice. So with everything, I think it's such a fascinating story you've had, and you've got my brain ticking on what we can really take from the sport into business, because I think there's so many learnings and so many opportunities, even just the way you make decisions, how you motivate, the structure, how all of that can, really enhance the corporate environment. With straddling both worlds now, what advice would you pass on to your younger self?
I think I look back and I was always quite risk averse. I think probably a factor from getting all the feedback from a young age. I was like, well, actually, I don't want brutal feedback. I'll play within myself. And I look back at some of my friends that probably did have the egos, but they were delivering because they were taking risks, and they were the more, should we say, box office players. To now actually don't need to be high risk, but more in the middle, step away from the comfort zone, which I've made myself do over a number of years now. But you have to do it. Otherwise, you become comfortable. And I look back at myself and I say, right, actually, I probably could have pushed a bit harder, could have done that, by just taking a few more risks.
How's this sit with your comfort zone?
Again, stepping out of the comfort zone.
Doing it live now.
Looking around, it can be daunting, right? But I think it's also talking like this, again, helps me think, actually, we've done quite a lot in 3 years.
Yeah, so congratulations.
And
before we close, is there any other message, anything you'd like to share that we haven't covered?
no, I think that's it. For me, it was just get help. There's nothing wrong with getting help or talking to someone if you don't know the answers, whether it's a mentor or somebody. And also looking at what motivates you. I think that is key. Once you find that, you can push on.
Quick thing on motivation before we do. How much time do you invest? How important is all your leaders knowing, go and find out what motivates you and find out what motivates a team? How much is that actually embedded into your company culture?
It's not enough as it should be. Okay. We've started pushing it the last few months, and I think it's really getting them to go away and think about, okay, starting with the elements of the job they enjoy, which bits do you not enjoy, and then really growing and helping them find that motivation.
Yeah.
I think some of them know it very easily. Yeah. Some have to spend a bit more time and really dig into it.
Because I do think, unfortunately, that's overlooked and actually could be the key to unlocking quite a lot of performance in people.
Yeah. And I think it filters down. If your team managers aren't motivated, how are they motivating the new people? Yeah,
completely. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and good luck in everything you do. And good luck with your vision and your direction and nailing it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. If you've been loving our Courageous Leaders podcast, please can I ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the quality content coming and reach listeners like you that we can then really, really help. We fund this podcast ourselves, so to have your support means that we can keep delivering week on week. Thank you.